What is this ilm? And it's not again about the information, but how their life were affected by the ilm. So he traveled for far distance, as Musa alayhi salam, and the ayat says, أو أمضي حقبة, that means for a long time, till he reached or till he attained this knowledge. And Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu used to say, and one of the Sahaba that we should all try to find their quotes and see what they said. One of them is Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. He has amazing statements. And all of that by of course, the barakah of the Suhbah, being a companion of the Prophet ﷺ, but especially with Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he was someone that is famous with the Quran. And من أراد أن يسمع القرآن غضا طريا, as the Prophet ﷺ, he said, whoever wants to listen to the Quran غضا طريا, very fresh, as if it's just revealed today, فليسمعه من ابن عبد, which is the Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. So he said, radiallahu anhu, Wallahi alladhi la ilaha illahu, swearing by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And usually when they swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, originally they don't need to because they're going to say the truth. But that means what comes after that, it's people, it seems, with their actions, that they're not taking this serious. So that's why when he swears by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to get the attention, that this is a very serious matter. It's the truth, it's the ultimate truth. ما أنزلت سورة من كتاب الله, there is no surah that was brought down in the book of Allah إلا وأنا أعلم أين نزلت, unless I know where it was revealed. ولا نزلت آية من كتاب الله إلا وأنا أعلم فيما أنزلت, and there is no ayah verse in the Quran came down from in the book of Allah unless I know فيما أنزلت, in what purpose it was revealed. But the shahid here, the point of reference here in this hadith, ولو أعلم أحدا أعلم مني بكتاب الله تبلغه الإبل لركبت إليه. And if I know someone have more knowledge than me in the book of Allah, and I can reach him with where the camels can reach, like how the furthest point that a camel can reach, this is the only ways of transportation for them, I would ride and reach him so that he can seek that knowledge and not satisfied with whatever he has. And many statements like this from the companions radiallahu anhum. Abu Darda said something similar than that, and others. And Masruq, when he traveled to Al-Kufa, and Sa'id ibn Jubayr from Al-Kufa to Abdullah ibn Abbas. Sa'id ibn Jubayr, very famous, one of the students of Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma. He traveled from Al-Kufa in Iraq to Ash-Sham, from Al-Kufa to Abdullah ibn Abbas in Mecca, asking him about the tafsir of an ayah. To ask him for the tafsir of an ayah. This is no exaggeration, but again, this is to show that this is the most valuable thing in them. And Al-Hasan traveled to Al-Kufa, to Ka'b ibn Ajura, asking about something, and so on. So that's why if you go on with this subject by itself, الرحلة, just الرحلة في طلب العلم, not just الرحلة في طلب العلم, to travel for seeking knowledge. This is one subject in the book of knowledge and the adab and the manners of knowledge, but just to see how many people they traveled for a question, for a hadith, for a verse, because there's nothing more important to them than the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and he mentioned all kinds of examples here. And that's why then after that, this first point he says, وفي هذا, in all of what is mentioned, إشارة, there's something to pay attention to. أن من أهمه أمر دينه كما أهمه أمر دنياه إذا حدثت له حادثة في دينه لا يجد من يسأله عنها إلا في بلد بعيد فإنه لا يتأخر عن السفر إليه ليستبرئ لدينه كما أنه لو عرض له هناك كسب دنيوي لبادر السفر إليه. And this, he mentioned this after a man that he made an oath, swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about something, but he could not know how to get himself relieved from this. And he asked the fuqaha in his town, and they told him about someone that is far to ask him. So he went and he traveled. So Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, he said this is an evidence that if you are concerned about your deen, if you truly someone that the deen is the most valuable thing in your life, and it is the same as your dunya. When the dunya, the worldly life is threatened, people take all kinds of means. People travel from the east to the west for some materialistic benefits of this dunya. So if something happens in one's religion, that he does not find someone to ask him about it, except in a place, in a town that is far from him, he should not delay traveling to him so that لِيَسْتَبْرِئَ لِدِينِهِ, so that he can save his religion. That means, how can you live another day with that issue with matters of the deen that you don't know the answer to it? We're not talking about matters of knowledge that is not affecting you. That's why he says something that concerns you. You're dealing with something. You are in a job. You're in your salah, for example. You don't know if you're doing this particular thing in the salah right or wrong or whatever. And you have to make salah. You have to seek provisions. You have to do all kinds of things. Then if you don't know the rulings of it in the deen of Islam, how can you continue to live your life like this? Even relationships, marriage and things of that nature. So if he doesn't find anyone except that he would travel far distance to ask him, he should not delay this so that he can protect his religion, as if a matter of worldly earnings, come about for him, he would travel to it. And of course, people travel all the time, since Allah knows best when. People travel for trade, and nobody would blame anyone if he's traveling for earnings. If he's going to make money, sure, go ahead, as long as it's halal. And people would consider someone like this as someone that is being successful. But when it comes to the deen is far more important than this. It's not to belittle the other things, but it's to show that the importance of our deen more important than anything in our life. And in this hadith of Abi Darda radiallahu anhu, he gave the glad tidings to the man that came seeking this hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And this is as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam in Surah Al-An'am. وإذا جاءك الذين يؤمنون بآياتنا فقل سلام عليكم كتب ربكم على نفسه الرحمة. If those who believe come to you, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, those who believe in the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when they come to you, why would they come to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam? Whether it's hijrah, whether it's whatever, but it's definitely to know how to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. فَقُلْ سَلَامٌ عَلَيْكُمْ, say to them, peace be upon you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained upon himself al-Rahmah. That means this is the path of mercy. When you take the means to get to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you. And one time he quoted, or he mentioned that Al-Hasan al-Basri, by his door, people were crowded trying to seek knowledge from him or to ask him something. So his son kind of responded to them not in the most lenient way. People are outside the door, and busy or being crowded and so on. So Al-Hasan said to him, Mahlan ya bunay, slow down my son, take it easy. And then he recited this ayah. They came to you, then say Salamun alaykum. Of course, there's etiquettes for the students of knowledge and for those who are seeking knowledge to be observed, but it shows again they're not coming for some worldly benefit. They're coming to get to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from them. So the Prophet ﷺ gave them this wasaya, this will, this advice to take care of those who come, as they would say, marhaban bi talib al-ilm. Someone coming to seek knowledge, they would say, welcome to the one that is seeking knowledge. And this, he mentioned all kinds of also narrations to this, related to this. Mu'adh radiallahu anhu, as we know the famous tradition from him, when he was dying, and Mu'adh radiallahu anhu is not just anyone, he is one of the great companions of the Prophet ﷺ that was known with his ilm. And he comes in the Day of Judgment ahead of the ulama of this ummah, biratwati hajar, with the distance of a stone thrown, because of his knowledge, radiallahu anhu. When he was dying, as he says, ta'assaf, he was feeling the feel of sorrow when he was dying, and he wept, not because he's departing from this worldly benefits or so, but because he's going to depart from majalis al-dhikr. Right? He said, إِنَّمَا أَبْكِي عَلَى ظَمَئِ الْهَوَاجِرِ. He was crying when he was dying. He said, I'm weeping because of that he will miss the thirst in the mid-summer day when he's fasting. He would miss these days that he would fast, and he would go through the struggle of fasting like the days of the summer that we're witnessing. وَقِيَامِ لَيْلِ الشِّتَاءِ, and the night prayer during the winter time. Long standing in the night prayer in the winter time. And the third one, and this is the shahid here, وَمُزَاحَمَةِ الْعُلَمَاءِ بِالرُّكَبِ عِنْدَ حِلَقِ الذِّكْرِ. مُزَاحَمَةِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. Al-muzahama is to be in that crowded place where people are seeking knowledge with the knees next to the knees because it's so crowded. by hilaq al-dhikr, by the gatherings of the dhikr of Allah, which is hilaq al-ilm. The hilaq of al-dhikr at the time of the Prophet ﷺ was basically the Quran, and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is being recited unto them, and they would learn it. So the person should have that eagerness, and the people of knowledge, they would welcome those who would come and seek the knowledge. So he mentioned also again some of these narrations of how they would welcome them. Then he says, when we explain this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Man salaka tariqan yaltamisu fihi ilman, salaka Allahu lahu bihi tariqan ila al-jannah." In another narration, "Man salaka tariqan," whoever takes a path. Salak كذلك نسلكه في قلوب المجرمين. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, this is how we put it in the hearts of the mujrimeen to be deviated, the criminal ones, is, you know, when you have something tight, and the only way that you get to it through a pipe, for example, you want to stuff it in and you push it in, right? So the word salaka is to take a path. It's the verb of taking a path that is known. But here it shows that how they are focused on this path, even if it's a tight path, they're willing to be on it till they reach their destination. They're not distracted. So in another narration, "Man salaka tariqan yaltamisu fihi ilman," seeking knowledge, "Sahhala Allahu lahu bihi tariqan ila al-jannah." Allah would make easy for him the path to Jannah. He says, what is the suluk al-tariq? What does it mean to take the path to seek knowledge? He says this can mean more than one thing. Either the actual physical taking a road or a way to seek knowledge, which is al-mashyu bil-aqdam ila majalis al-ilm, to walk physically, to take yourself physically to majalis al-ilm, which is something that if we find ourselves not doing this is a great danger. If a person is in a community that he doesn't find himself walking or driving till he reaches the masjid, doesn't matter, that he's not physically going to majalis al-ilm, something wrong. We need to change whatever we're upon to make sure that there is majalis ilm. And alhamdulillah, that's why a person should take the advantage of being in places where you can establish majalis al-ilm and you can learn the deen. And it doesn't have to be that we are in the presence of the kibar of al-ulama. We wish, of course, to be that way. But the ilm, alhamdulillah, each one or people have a student of knowledge, someone that learned something of the deen, to come to the masjid. And that's why we should not belittle these things. You know, when you have in the masjid here, for example, you have durus that are being announced and the Shaykh will give you the dars. Why we're slacking? What is better in our life than to seek the knowledge of the deen of Islam? If the only benefit that we get when we are in the gatherings of majalis al-ilm is to get the rewards of it, even if a person doesn't understand anything, doesn't learn anything, it is sufficient rewards. And you add to it the barakah and the blessing, especially at the time that we live in. It is not always has to be virtual, but going physically to majalis al-ilm, this is something that has a great effect, and to be patient in seeking the knowledge that way. So either to go physically, and that should be done as we heard, and also it means something more general than this, and that is سلوك الطريق المعنوية المؤدية إلى حصول العلم. To go and to take the different roads and paths to seek the non-physical means to seek knowledge. مثل حفظه, to memorize matters of knowledge, دراسته, to study it, to read, to التفهم, to understand what is being presented for matters of ilm, to reflect upon it, and the like of that, so that the person would understand and get to know the matters of knowledge. So that's why if a person goes and he studies, and it's also one of the things is no matter what type of gathering of ilm, and we have to define what's majalisul ilm. Is it the majalis that, and he talks about this here also, when someone, he came and he found in the masjid two circles of, people sitting and someone is speaking to them. One is qassas, someone is telling stories to the people. And usually in the past, this was something that refers to those who don't really care about authenticity of stuff. They want to get the hearts of the people, so stories and fairy tales and things like this, and people start weeping and and things like this. And it's just stories. Versus another gathering, that doesn't undermine the stories. Of course, stories are mentioned in the Quran and in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It's one of Jundam min Junudillah. Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, he said it's one of the deputies of Allah. It affects the hearts, of course, and we need this. But he saw in the other gathering, someone is teaching people the matters of fiqh. How to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how to make salah, how to pay zakah. So he was confused which one to sit with. So whether he slept and he saw in his dream or something, but it doesn't matter. Of course, what was best for him is to sit where the halal and the haram is mentioned, to learn his deen, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from him. And this is gatherings that soften the hearts, opposite to what people might think, because with the intention that you want to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you. What's haram so that you stay away from it, not what's haram so that it becomes of a burden to my life, the opposite. You know, people sometimes they run away, they don't want to know what's halal and haram, it's going to make their life difficult. So they rather just be ignorant about this matter. This is how the adab and the manners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they were more eager to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, even they were waiting for anything. Even if it's give up all of your wealth, give your life, do whatever you do, it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how can that be not responded except with full submission to the commands of Allah? So whether it's physical way or a non-physical way, and with the non-physical way to help the person to establish what he learned when he went physically to majalis al-ilm. So this is suluk al-tariq. But we have to take this road, this proper path to seek the knowledge of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is again through the people of knowledge. And the people of knowledge are the ones that would tell the person, this is what you study first. Don't suggest what you want to learn, because nobody does this when they go learn, for example, want to take a certificate or a degree. They don't suggest for the school, I want to study that first and then this first. You know, they go, they know that they have experience, they know that this is something that they exactly know how to do with it. So they learn it and they humble themselves. The deen is far more important than this. And that's why when we find ourselves, everybody's talking about the deen because it's our deen. So everybody's talking about the deen, with ilm, without knowledge, referring to the ulama, not referring. And this is the chaos that we live in. This is deen established on ilm, on very clear structures of matter. And that's why we have to differentiate between someone is giving us reminders versus the people of knowledge. Right? We can, we can learn how to make salah and this and that. But when it comes to actions, even with these matters, when it comes to actions, we refer to the people of knowledge, the people of ilm. When it comes to reminders, for us to be reminded of the hereafter and things like this, mashallah, we should remind one another. But when it comes to actions, right, we have to have learned it first. Not from my own thinking and my own liking. We have to learn it to teach it, and not to be in haste in doing so. And then a person should seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the second statement, سَهَّلَ اللَّهُ لَهُ بِهِ طَرِيقًا إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. What does it mean that Allah would make easy for him the path to Jannah? He said either it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for that person seeking knowledge. He would make the ilm easy for him. He would make the knowledge that he's seeking easy for him. And if that becomes easy for him, then this ilm or this knowledge is the path to Jannah. So the path to Jannah is the path of knowledge of the deen of Islam. And again, the knowledge is not the information, the knowledge that is going to be applied. So when the ilm is made easy for the person because he took that road to the ilm, if he sees that the matter has been made easy for him, this is a good sign. That means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making it easy for him to enter the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. We had made the Quran easy for للذكر, for people to learn it and to remember it. فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. The question is there anyone that would take then the Quran in which he would study it and memorize it and act upon it? As group from Salaf, they said with regards to this ayah, هَلْ مِن طَالِبِ عِلْمٍ فَيُعَانُ عَلَيْهِ. What the ayah means is there طالب علم, is there a student of knowledge, seeker of knowledge, that he will be helped as a result of want to seek the knowledge of the Quran? So if you take the path of seeking knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for you if you are sincere. It doesn't have to be one form. Doesn't mean that if you rejected from a school, for example, that means the doors and the gates of seeking knowledge are closed, because this is not the way, or this is not the only way to seek knowledge. And actually we can say very clearly at ease, a shahada or a degree does not make a person a scholar, does not make a person a student of knowledge either, right? So, and this is something that Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he said even al-wilaya, to be appointed in a position does not make a person a scholar. So it's the ilm that the person has to acquire, the ilm of the wahy and the way the early generations of Islam that is applied in his life, that make him among the people of taqwa, and he would act upon his knowledge and he would go seek that from the people of knowledge. So this is one of the meanings of it that many don't pay attention to this. What is the meaning of Allah would make it easy for him? The path to Jannah is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would make it easy for him to comprehend the ilm. مَا يُرِدِ اللَّهُ بِهِ خَيْرًا يُفَقِّهُ فِي الدِّينِ. As the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants good for him, he would make him يُفَقِّهُ, as Ibn Hajar said, يُفَهِّمْهُ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would make him understand the knowledge. And many people, they would have the knowledge, but they don't understand it properly. And that's why they would fall into ghulu, extremism, one way or the other, even though they have some information. So to have the proper understanding, which is the proper understanding that was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, this is the fruit of the ilm. So this is one meaning. And also it's that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make easy for him the way to Jannah, is as he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make easy for him al-amal, to act upon his knowledge, which is basically muqtada al-ilm. Why you seek knowledge? To act upon it. Right? So if a person is seeking knowledge, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide them to act upon his knowledge, this is a good sign for him. That means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making the road and the way for him to enter Jannah easy for him. By seeking it, seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, so that becomes means for his guidance, and he seek his guidance first and foremost with the ilm that he's seeking, and this is one of the roads and the ways to Jannah that makes the person attain it. Another meaning, and of course these types of things as mentioned also on a person, when you come to the majalisul ilm, this is advice to myself and everyone, even if the person that is, any majlis of al-ilm, if you want to benefit from it, also things needs to be recorded, need to take something with you, and no matter how long it passes, if you take notes, if you see these notes after years, you would remember everything that is being mentioned, this gathering of ilm that you attended. Otherwise, it goes away. This ilm is like, when you hunt an animal, either you bring it down with writing notes, or you would lose it, or you would forget it. It becomes in the category of wa'd or reminders and things like this. So this is also one of the meanings of it. A third meaning he mentions, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would make easy for the one that is seeking knowledge, other types of knowledge that he would benefit from it. So it becomes also a path for him to enter Jannah. One knowledge leads to another knowledge. This is the barakah of ta'ah, that it leads for another ta'ah. The barakah of being obedient to Allah. If you do a good deed, there's a barakah here, blessings that you will be helped to do another good deed. And the evil outcome of a sin, that it makes it easy for you to do another sin. So when a person seeks knowledge, the ways of knowledge becomes easy for the person, and never to give up and to be sincere. Many people, they quit early on, whether it's because they're bored, or it's difficult for them, or they cannot understand, or whatever there is. If they put the effort and they seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if it's for a short period of time because they're busy, yes, they don't have to be among the people of knowledge, but they learn the obligatory knowledge that is upon us, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easier for them. So this is a principle in the deen. ثواب الحسنة الحسنة بعده. One of you do a good deed, hasana. You want the reward in the hereafter, right? And a sign that this deed is accepted, that you would find another hasana. Another good deed is made easy for you. So this is the thawab. Why? Why is it a thawab? It's a reward because it increases your rewards in the day of judgment. And this is the blessings of the ta'ah and to be obedient to Allah. وَيَزِيدُ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ اهْتَدَوْا هُدًى. Allah increases those who guided another guidance. وَالَّذِينَ اهْتَدَوْا زَادَهُمْ هُدًى وَأَتَاهُمْ تَقْوَاهُم. Those who were guided, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increased their guidance and He gave them the taqwa. So whoever seeks the knowledge to be guided with this knowledge, because this is what the knowledge is for, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase his knowledge and increase his guidance, that would make him do more and more of the good deeds. And the good deeds are not just by the physical aspects of it. Two people can do the same good deed physically, but what's in the heart of one versus the other is completely different. And when it comes to the sincerity, following the way the Prophet ﷺ, also as the ulama, they mentioned, if a person has, with the level of al-iman is strong, the rewards are multiplied for that person versus someone that has weak iman. So it's more blessings after blessing. One of the meanings also that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would make easy for the person, this ilm that he's seeking, he would benefit from it in the hereafter. So which, as the hadith apparently says, سهل الله له به طريقا إلى الجنة. He would enter the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what in the day of judgment that would get the people to enter Jannah? The last thing before entering Jannah is a sirat, the straight path, a sirat al-mustaqim. Underneath it the hellfire, and the other side is the qantara, the bridge, and then people will enter Jannah. So if a person seeks the knowledge of the deen of Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make easy for him to go over the sirat. As the Prophet ﷺ described it, dahdu mazalla. It's the sirat, the norm is people would fall from it. Unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make those who are firm upon it. And how can a person be firm upon it and to travel on it till he reaches the Jannah? It's by the provisions that a person gets from this life. It's not how physically strong you are or so. It's by the good deeds versus the bad deeds that will take the person down. So one of the means to be firm upon the Salat al-Mustaqim and to go very fast, because people will be in different speeds, as the Prophet ﷺ said, and each according to their speed, the fire will take things, trying to pull them down, and some people would fall. And these are from the people, the Ahl Qibla. The Kuffar, disbelievers, they won't even get into that stage. They will be in hellfire before the Salat. It's only the Muslims, only the believers, they will pass the Sarat. And underneath it is the hellfire, and there are hooks on both sides, and as the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and they will go on it as much as they have of the good deeds. So this is another meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for them. One of the very important means to take in this life when we think of the Sarat in the Day of Judgment is to seek knowledge. And the way to do that, as he says, إِذَا أَرَادَ بِهِ وَجْهَ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ وَطَلَبِ مَرْضَاتِهِ. If he seeks the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, sincerely seeking the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the knowledge is one of the shortest and the fastest and the most benefiting way to enter the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whoever takes it, and he says, وَلَمْ يُعْوَجْ عَنْهُ, he did not deviate from it. So there's all kinds of detours and all kinds of people that will pull you away, or different ways that they would think that they're seeking knowledge when they're not. So whoever takes it, he would reach to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to the Jannah. And that's why the warning, with every command or commanded, there's warnings that comes with it. That's why whoever takes these ways to Jannah, but if he thinks that this is the way of Jannah without knowledge, فَقَدْ سَلَكَ أَعْسَرَ الطُّرُقِ وَأَشَقِهَا. The easiest way to enter Jannah is through knowledge. And if a person thinks that he can take the way to Jannah without knowledge, he has taken the most difficult path whatsoever, and it would not get him to his destination. So he just be wasting his time. So the ilm comes قبل القول والعمل, before the speech and actions. And those who belittle in the hearts of the people knowledge, they say, look at what's happening, you're going to sit and isolate yourself and learn and leave the Muslims this, or they don't understand what ilm is. How can you even go to give da'wah to others if you don't have the ilm of what you're saying? Everything is based on the ilm. And it doesn't mean that a person isolate himself. You learn and you teach, and it depends on the circumstances. Alhamdulillah, if you have abundance, say for example, if a person is in an environment or at times when there's so much people of knowledge, then this is, of course, he leave this matter to them and he study. He doesn't waste his time. But if it doesn't, which is the case that we have in many situations, the person can do both, but not to abandon seeking knowledge in the proper way. So again, no way for a person to seek the pleasure of Allah without al-ilm al-nafi', the benefiting knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the messengers with, and He brought the book, the Quran. This is the evidence to reach, and this is how to be guided from the darknesses of ignorance to the light of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and guidance. So this is then after that, when he talks about something also very serious, and we should pay attention to this. We tend sometimes or many times to complain and we don't do anything about the situations that we're in besides complaining, right? So we should do something, and everything is by the qadr of Allah. He says here, a very benefiting part of knowledge. He says, وَبَقَاءُ الْعِلْمِ بَقَاءُ حَمَلَتِهِ. The ilm stays on the face of earth by the staying of the carriers of the ilm. The ilm doesn't come from the air, right? It doesn't come from even the books. It comes from the people of knowledge. So the people of knowledge, this is lineage. They come from one generation to the other. They pass on this ilm. So if there's no ulama, there's no ilm. If there's no people carrying the ilm, there's no knowledge to be passed. And that's why فَإِذَا ذَهَبَ حَمَلَةُ وَمَنْ يَقُومُ بِهِ وَقَعَ النَّاسُ فِي الضَّلَالِ. If the carriers of the ilm are gone, they're dead, and people, they will have deviation. Those who have knowledge and those who are upon it, people will be deviated. And that's why if you talk about the fitan, and if you talk about the fitan that we're facing, we can very easily say that it's because of the lack of ilm. The lack of the people, or the abundance of people of knowledge that are present on the earth, that they would be upon the ilm that they learned. So what should we do? We should change that situation. How is that? Seek knowledge. Be among the people of knowledge. Increase the people of knowledge on the face of earth. Sincerely for the sake of Allah. Not for one's glory or oneself, but to do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from this ummah. So the best people, especially at these times, the best people that are doing the best for the ummah are those who are seekers of knowledge in the right way, so that they would lift this ignorance that is present, which causes the confusion among the people. The fitan is because of the confusion, because of the ignorance. But if you know what is right and what is wrong, you're not afflicted with the fitna. The fitan, the trials and tribulations, if you know this is right and this is wrong, even if it's difficult and you take the right path, you're not being affected by the fitna. The fitna is when people are not really sure what is right and what is wrong and what to take, and this is the real fitna. How to protect oneself from this? It's not my words, this words, whatever. It's to take the path of knowledge. When a person learns the ilm, اعرف الحق تعرف أهله. If you know the truth, you will know the people of the truth. As the hadith of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, إن الله لا يقبض العلم انتزاعا ينتزعه من صدور الرجال ولكن يذهب العلم بذهاب العلماء. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not take the knowledge intiza'an, when you snatch something away. He does not take away the knowledge from the hearts of men, which shows also the hearts. The ilm is in the heart, and it shows its effect in the physical being. But rather Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take the knowledge away by dhahab al-ulama, when the ulama are gone. فَإِذَا لَمْ يَبْقَ عَالِمٍ, if there is no alim present, اتَّخَذَ النَّاسُ رُؤُوسًا جُهَالًا, people will take ignorant heads. فَسُئِلُوا, they will be asked. فَأَفْتَوْا, they will give the fatwa and the verdict. بِغَيْرِ عِلْم, without knowledge. فَضَلُّوا وَأَضَلُّوا, they will deviate and they will deviate others. And people, they have to have heads, they have to have people that they would ask and they would follow. And if it's not based on ilm, it's going to be based on jahl. And there's a hadith also that brings the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our hearts. Also the hadith of Abi Darda. He says, كنا مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال, we were with the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم one day. And he was saying something عليه الصلاة والسلام, فقال هذا أوان يختلس العلم من الناس. This is the time when the ilm will be taken away without the people feeling it. It will be taken away, and this is what al-ikhtilas, when something is taken in a way that people don't see it happening from the people. حتى لا يقدروا منه على شيء, till they're not able to attain the ilm. فقال زياد بن لبيد رضي الله عنه, كيف يختلس من العلم وقد قرأنا القرآن. How would the ilm will be taken away from us when we're reciting the Quran and learning the Quran? فوالله لنقرأنه ولنقرئنه نساءنا وأبناءنا. Wallahi, we will read the Quran and we would make our women and children read it. فقال, so the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام said, and this is authentic hadith in Sunan Tirmidhi and others, ثكلتك أمك يا زياد. Responding to what he said, ثكلتك أمك is literally means may your mother lose you, but it's not meant. What is said is not meant. This is a statement that they would say that means you're in loss. What you said is not correct. He said, إن كنت لأعدك من فقهاء المدينة. I was thinking that you are from the fuqaha, from the people of understanding and knowledge of Al-Madinah. The Prophet ﷺ is saying that to him because this is how his response, how the ilm will be taken away when we are reading the Quran and we're making sure that our wives and children are doing the same. So he said, هذه التوراة والإنجيل عند اليهود والنصارى فماذا تغني عنهم? The Prophet ﷺ said, this is the Torah and the Injil with the Jews and the Christians. What did that avail to them? What did benefit them? They're not acting upon it. And of course, if they act upon it, they would put it aside and turn to the Quran and to follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ. So Jubayr ibn Nufayr, he said, فَلَقِيتُ عُبَادَ بْنِ الصَّامِتِ, I met Ubadah ibn Samit, and I said, أَلَا تَسْمَعُ مَا يَقُولُ أَبُو الدَّرْدَاءِ. He was kind of, did you hear what Abu Darda said? So I informed him, I said, صدق أبو الدرداء. He was truthful in what he said. And he said, لو شئت لأخبرتك بأول علم يرفع من الناس. If you wish, I will tell you the first knowledge or first type of knowledge that will be lifted away from people. He said, الخشوع. الخشوع. To be in this khushu' devotion in the salah and the focus in the salah. يوشك أن تدخل مسجد الجامع فلا ترى فيه خاشعا. Very soon you will enter a masjid jama' full of people that you don't find in it khashi'a. Of course you don't see a khashi'a because the khushu' is in the heart. Right? But that's what it means, that the people this would be taken away from them. So al-khushu' ilm. And al-khushu' is not a knowledge that, okay, let me learn how the khushu' is. So you learn it and you memorize it and then the next salah you have the full khushu'. It doesn't work that way. Because the khushu' is a deed done by the heart. And anything that has to do with the heart, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that bestowed that upon the people. If they take the physical means, and one of the means is to be taken is to seek the benefiting knowledge that would make them purify their hearts and would make them understand this worldly life versus the hereafter, and to understand the concept of things and what's more valuable in our life, right? And all kinds of things. If a person have $1 billion that he would get after Salatul Maghrib today, but with the condition that he has khushu'. What kind of khushu' he's going to get? He's going to have in his heart full focus in the salah, right? Because of whatever the reality that he has, that he values. So when we see that the value of the hereafter, when it's not well established and it's always present in our heart, for whatever reason there is, and one of which is the lack of the benefiting knowledge and exerting oneself to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is also one of the outcome of al-ilm. Al-khushu' is one of the outcome of al-ilm. And by also taking the physical means, coming to the masjid, following the way of the Prophet ﷺ, and strengthening our hearts with relying upon Allah, knowing certain facts, and this is how al-iman is. Not everything has to be physically done. If a person knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one worthy of worship, if a person knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has these perfect names and attributes, if a person knows that without the help of Allah we cannot be helped, so a person in his heart, he has the strength that he's relying upon Allah, and he knows the value of what he's doing. This is the most important thing in one's life. As the statement of Sa'id al-Musayyib rahimahullah, when he said that just the 5 daily salah, من صلى الصلوات الخمس في جماعة فقد ملأ البر والبحر عبادة. Whoever praised the 5 daily salah in the masjid, he had filled the earth and the seas with ibadah. But with these types of levels of knowledge, as the Prophet and the khushu', where the Prophet ﷺ, for example, in the authentic hadith, إن العبد لا ينصرف من صلاته ولم يكتب له, that the abd, the person, the slave, the worshipper, he would finish the salah and only ولم يكتب له إلا عشرها, only 1/10 of the salah is recorded for him. تسعها ثمنها سبعها سدسها خمسها ربعها ثلثها نصفها. 1/10 of it, 1/9 of it, 1/8 of it, 1/7 of it, 1/6 of it, 1/5, 1/4, 1/3, 1/2. That means people physically doing the act of the salah, but the rewards is from, some get 1/10 only, some get 1/2 of it. Based on what? Physically they're doing the same thing. It's based on what's in their hearts. And the khushu' and what comes as a result of the khushu' and the fear of Allah and the hope for the rewards from Allah, the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hearts, all of that comes as a result of a person exalting this deen and learning the benefiting knowledge and to be upon it. It's something that goes all together by the will and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then he mentioned all of this, and when it comes to how the ilm would go is when people are not acting upon it. The first one is the ulama, by the death of the ulama. The death of a alim is musibah, is a calamity in this ummah. And that's why people need to do something about it. And that is whoever finds in himself the means to study the deen, he should not, as Rabi'at al-Ra'i, he said, one of the students of one of the mashayikh of Imam Malik rahimahullah, he said, the student of Imam Malik rahimahullah, he said that whoever finds himself having the ability to study, فَلَا يُضَيِّعَنَّ نَفْسَهُ, he should not ruin himself. You have the ability to seek knowledge, don't ruin yourself. Right? And when it comes to seeking knowledge, again, this is a different subject. People are levels. And we're all, masses, awam from the Muslimin. But to be a student of knowledge, that means you're occupied the entire day and the entire night, and everything is about the deen of Allah. And these also, whoever wants to do this and you have the means, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will find ways for him to help him. One of the intentions is to change one situation and to do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from this ummah, is for the ilm to stay. You want to make sure that the ilm that goes to the next generation is not distorted. One of the scary things that when you see how things are changing, what kind of deen that we are passing to the next generation. The next generation, what they're seeing from us. What are they seeing from the deen of Islam? Not in the books, right? As the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ we heard, from ourselves, from our ilm that we have, our actions. They're seeing, for the most part, a distorted image of the deen of Islam. So that means it becomes more distorted in them. We need to make sure that the deen in our life, in our masajid, in our homes, is the same as it was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the companions radiallahu anhum, the early generations of Islam. And alhamdulillah, by the mercy of Allah, this is always going to be present in the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, but it becomes less at certain times and becomes more at other times. So to make sure that this is there, and that's why when it comes to matters that is affecting the deen of the people, there is difference between being nice and kind and so on, and being firm so that the deen is not changed. So when people start changing things in the deen, the haram becomes halal, or they're confusing the haram from the halal. The matter has to be very clear. This is the deen of Allah. This is how to save the deen of Allah. No compromisation in this whatsoever. And that's why when people have the lack of knowledge, they think that they're doing good when they're doing evil. And that's why those who have the ability to judge what is the benefiting things versus the mafsada is not the common people. Is not the ones that graduated from this school or that school. This is not for them. This is for kibar ahl ilm, from the major scholars. We as common Muslims, we need to know how to make salah and give zakah and our rulings of the ibadah and the deen. When it comes to what affects the ummah and even our ibadah and everything, we need to ask the people of knowledge and to humble ourselves to follow the deen and the things that is according to the text, not according to our opinions. If we just open any subjects of these, they call it controversial issues, you would find each and one of us have his own opinion. And we would argue. But if you do this, the people will do this. All reason. Where's the text? And if there is a text, who's quoting the text? Is it the people of knowledge that learn the text? Or it's me and yourself and everyone, and we can quote whatever we want, and even the text, if it's quoted, a person will say, but this and that and so on. Not submission to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anyway, so as we heard in this, and the last, or some of the things that he also mentioned here after mentioning these hadiths, al-ilm al-nafi', again the benefiting knowledge, huwa ma bashara al-qalb, since the first knowledge is going to be lifted is al-khushu'. So the benefiting knowledge is ma bashara al-qalb. That means he is mixed with the heart. فَأَوْقَرَ فِيهِ, so this benefiting knowledge establishes in the heart مَعْرِفَةُ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وَعَظَمَتُهُ, to get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His azama, His exaltation. That's why ilm al-tawheed is the most important ilm ever. To get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His rububiyyah, that He's the Lord of the alameen. What does that mean? That He's the one that is worthy of worship. Every ibadah should be done to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names and attributes. And when we read the Quran, this is how we learn also how to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing is the like of Him. And that's why when you have the foundation of the aqidah, you will be able to have the proper khushu' and the proper purification of your soul. So when you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala laysa kamithli shay, nothing is the like of Allah, and you took that from the perspective of aqidah, any of the attributes of Allah, we say we believe in it, we know the meaning of it. We don't say how it is because we don't know the how of it, but know drawing similarities and so on. Well, this is the belief of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, not denying it, not distorting it. And as a result of that, when you know that nothing is the like of Allah, then you will have the proper exaltation of Allah. Because some people, even like with one subject, and there are many of it, as Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah said, most of the people, أكثر الناس يسيئون الظن بربهم عز وجل. Most of the people, they think bad about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though they don't say it. When they think that the way for them to earn, the way for them to have a pleasant life is to turn away from some of the deen. Or وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ to commit a sin. Or that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not aid and help this religion. This is bad thinking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or when something calamity happens to the person, he would say, why this is happening to me? Or in his heart, he's seeing that he's less fortunate than others. That he sees others have more good things than him. And he has al-Islam, which is the most valuable thing whatsoever. Right? And this is, if you take the roots of it, it comes from the fact that people do not know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If a person knows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with his names and attributes, he would see every action from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a beautiful action. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his actions are all beautiful. And it's all perfect, based on the perfect wisdom of Allah and the mercy of Allah and the justice of Allah. And we are living in this life, whatever given to us, it's given to us by Allah as a test. Some people are given wealth and some people are not given wealth. Some people are given health, some people are not given health. Right? This is all, test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the story of Al-Khadr alayhi salam that we recited every Jumu'ah, right? The child that was commanded by Al-Khadr to kill him, right? This is something that, as Qatada said, rahimahullah, he was loved by his parents and they were so happy when they had birth to that child. And they became so sad and miserable when he died, which is a normal thing. There's nothing wrong with this. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed that for them by His mercy subhanahu wa ta'ala, because if he have lived, it would have been this child a source of their own destruction. So you don't know what's good and what's bad. Just the fact that a person, he thinks that I know what is good and what is bad, this is arrogance in itself. How do you know what is good and what is bad if there's no knowledge? If a person says, I know that it's good for me to have $1 million, mashallah. Where'd you get to know that? Right? Allah knows best. And how many people that got it and it was the source of their destruction. Or it's good for me that I have children, I have a big family or small family. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. And that's why a person, we all take the means, the halal means, not the haram means. And you leave the matter to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever you have, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is what is best for you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He extracts from the people whether to be patient or whether to be not patient, whether to be obedient to Allah or not. So it's all based on the ilm. So the ilm al-nafi' is the ilm that stays in the heart by knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wa khashyati, and the fear of Allah, wa ijlali wa ta'zim, to exalt Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the love of Allah. Wa mata sakanat, see the words, wa mata sakanat hadhihi al-ashya'u fil qalb khasha'a. فخشعت الجوارح كلها تبعا لخشوع. Once these things sakanat from a sukun stays and it's not moving anymore. And also when you have the word, the homes are called in the Quran sakan, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala جعل لكم من بيوتكم سكنا, the places where you calm down, right? And in itself that means this is your home, this is what you're living. So these things has to live in our hearts. Not that a person once in a while he loves Allah, or once in a while he fears Allah. No, the love of Allah, and the fear of Allah, and the hope for the rewards from Allah, and exalting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's all well established and it's living in our hearts. Once that is the case, then the heart will have the khushu'. Then the heart will have the perfect khushu', and therefore the rest of the body will have the khushu' and would humble itself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah, he said, the ilmu ilman, there's two types of knowledge. علم اللسان, the ilm with the speech, the tongue, that we're talking. This is ilm. If it says قال الله قال رسول الله, this is ilm. فذاك حجة الله على ابن آدم. This is the hujjah, the evidence established against the son of Adam. When a person is told that this is what you need to do, this is what's haram, this is what needs to be done, then a person, if he doesn't do it, he's held accountable for it. It becomes hujjah against him. وعلم في القلب, and a knowledge in the heart. فذاك العلم النافع. This is the benefiting knowledge when it's in the heart. And if it's in the heart, it has to show. So it's not someone to claim, I have the benefiting knowledge in my heart, and then he doesn't pray or he disobeys Allah. He has the knowledge of the shaitan in his heart, not the knowledge of the deen of Allah. Right? And that's, as we heard the hadith and the dua, the Prophet ﷺ used to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ilmin la yanfa' wa min qalbin la yakhsha' wa min nafsin la tajba' wa min du'a'in la yustajab. So this is a dua. This is to rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he says فإذا ذهب من الناس لعلم الباطن بقى الظاهر على ألسنة حجة ثم يذهب هذا العلم الذي هو حجة بذهاب حملته. So if the knowledge in the heart, which is, as we heard, these pillars of the ibadah, the love of Allah, knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on, if it goes away from the heart, then what stays is the physical one, what is being said, what is being taught, and eventually that also will go away. If the ones in the heart is not well established, then also this knowledge, the physical thing that is being propagated and so on, will go away. And then that by the people of knowledge would depart. وَلَا يَبْقَى مِنَ الدِّينِ إِلَّا اسْمًا, as one of the signs of the hour, that the deen would be just the names of it and so on. So al-batin, what brings the fear of Allah and so on. Wa-zahir, it's what's on the tongue. So he mentioned many of the quotes of the early generations of Islam in this, and the ilm, that when you, for example, you go ask a person of knowledge something, you're given the apparent things of ilm, which is the essential thing for the heart to be affected. Then he say, for example, the ruling is someone in matter of a talaq or divorce or marriage, that he would say to him that your wife now is divorced. Right? The person, when he receives this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated as far as the rulings are concerned. Or this is haram for you to do so. What is the effect of this ilm on the lisan that is given? You're given something that you heard it from someone that you trust his knowledge and his religion. What is the effect of that in your heart? If your heart has the love of Allah, the fear of Allah, the hope for the rewards from Allah, you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with his names and attributes, you would say how beautiful that is. Because that's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even if it's going to make you stay away from what you desire so much. But that's what the person, when he submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most beloved thing to him, it's to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from him. قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبُكُمُ اللَّهُ. That if you say that you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, follow me, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will love you. So, and we're not like those deviants who would say that al-ilm al-batin, or the inside knowledge, is this foolishness or going against the way of the Prophet ﷺ, or bid'ah or innovations or making up their own religion. Of course not. This is exactly how the Prophet ﷺ and the early generations of Islam used to be upon. You guys with me, inshallah? We still have 20 minutes. It's okay? And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us benefit of what we hear. And that's why the subject, the hadith, whoever takes the road or the way to ilm, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make ways easy for him. And with all the different classifications of this, which is again the fruit of it, is the fear of Allah. As كثير من السلف, they said, ليس العلم كثرة الرواية ولكن العلم الخشية. Al-ilm is not how many riwayas and texts that a person can convey, but rather it's the fear of Allah. وَكَفَى بِخَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ عِلْمًا وَكَفَى بِالِاغْتِرَارِ بِاللَّهِ جَهْلًا. It's sufficient for a person knowledge that he fears Allah. But fearing Allah without ilm, it's not fear, right? So that nobody would say, as long as I fear Allah, I have knowledge. How can you fear Allah without knowledge? Right? You have to have knowledge to fear Allah. So if you don't fear Allah, you don't have knowledge. It was just some form of information, right, that did not lead you to the fear of Allah. And for you to fear Allah, there is no way someone can fear Allah without knowledge. And whatever, and it doesn't have to be that he has to be the biggest scholar in the world, but whatever he learns, he applies it. And that brings the fear of Allah. He exalted that this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you worship Allah with these three actions, which is pillars of the ibadah by the heart: the love, the fear, the hope. The love of Allah, the fear of Allah, the hope for the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the alim, as some from the early generations of Islam used to say, alimun billah, laysa bi'alimin bi'amrillah. The categories: a person, he has the knowledge of Allah, so he knows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he's not having the knowledge of the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, versus those who would know the commands of Allah, but they don't know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the other ones. But this is another categories. So, he says afterwards, because of the time, he start talking about those who claim about some knowledge of the inside and ilm al-batin and the like of them. As the statement of Ali radiallahu anhu, which is a beautiful statement also, that talks about the different categories of people when it comes to ilm. الناس ثلاثة. You probably heard this before. His risala, radiallahu anhu, he says الناس ثلاثة. People are three types. عالم رباني. Alim, that is Rabbani, lordly alim, if it's correct to say. That means he's a alim and he knows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he's upon the amal, the actions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from him. ومتعلم على سبيل نجاة. A muta'allim, someone is seeking the knowledge on the path of salvation. He's taken the road and the path to save himself by learning. وهمج رعاع. The third category, همج رعاع. What's همج رعاع? The nomads, the ones that has no guidance whatsoever. The people that are acting foolishly on the face of earth. Right? That they يتبعون كل ناعق. Anyone that talks eloquently or say something, they follow him. So they follow this person, this group of people for some time. Then someone else speaks better than him. They follow him. At certain times of their age, they thought this is such a bad and evil thing. And then after some time, someone convinced them, no, it's a beautiful thing. So they would become like this. They are just easily to be manipulated. So you can say that this is how وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. Indeed, all mankind are in loss. So all mankind are like this. They're manipulated and deceived, and shaitan and shayateen are working. They're not leaving people to, alone. So how to oppose this without ilm? There's no way. So what is left is عالم رباني ومتعلم على سبيل النجاة. You don't have a choice but to be one or the other, and one leads to the other. Either to be a عالم رباني, or to be someone that seeks the knowledge on the path of trying to save yourself. So that means it's a mandatory thing for each and everyone to seek the knowledge, at least the mandatory knowledge, the obligatory knowledge upon us, to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So again, all of that, and to seek knowledge is the way to enter the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِذَا مَرَرْتُمْ بِرِيَاضِ الْجَنَّةِ فَارْتَعُوا. If you pass by the gardens of Jannah, فَارْتَعُوا. Irta'u, that means go ahead and eat and drink and enjoy this beautiful garden and the beautiful food in it. So they said, وَمَا رِيَاضُ الْجَنَّةِ. They said, O Prophet of Allah, what is رِيَاضُ الْجَنَّةِ? He said, حِلَقُ الذِّكْر, the gatherings of knowledge. So never to deprive oneself from this. And that's what Ibn Mas'ud, when he mentions, أَمَا إِنِّي لَا أَعْنِي الْقُصَّاصِ وَلَكِنْ حِلَقِ الْفِقْهِ. He said, I don't mean by that al-Qussas, the storytellers, but I mean the hilaqul fiqh, to understand the deen, the ilm of the aqidah, the fiqh, how to purify your heart, how to soften your heart, how to fear Allah, how to be obedient to Allah, how to love Allah, how to have khushu', these types of ilm, and with all what that means. Relationships, when we're sitting here in the masjid, each one of us, he has occupation, that he has relationships, he has job maybe, or he has a school, or he has nothing, whatever there is. How is the ilm affecting all of these types of things? If there's no ilm, then a person is not acting based on ilm, he's going to act based on ignorance. And that affects even the ilm in the masajid. So the ilm of the masjid is not how to worship Allah and to make salah, and that's it. And then what's outside the masjid, each one on their own ways and their own desires, that's not in the deen of Islam. This is in the masjid, in the home, in the streets, in your work. There is always ilm in every aspect, in every state, in every speech, in every action. So that shows the importance of hilaqul ilm, to learn these matters of ilm and to establish it in our hearts. As Ata al-Kharasani said, Majalis al-dhikr, the gatherings of al-dhikr, Majalis al-halali wal-haram, the majalis of the halal and the haram. This is halal, this is haram. كيف تشتري وتبيع, how to buy and sell. وتصلي وتصوم, how to pray and how to fast. وتنكح وتطلق, how to get married and how to get divorced. وتحج وأشباه هذا, and to make hajj and the like of this. So this is, and this is just one aspect of the ilm. This is the majalis that a person wants to learn and how to be upon it. So this is again to show that the majalis of dhikr is not the majalis that people make dhikr like this. People might think to say tasbih, tahmeed and so on. Rather is to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. And what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hates. And this is, then it gets into the subject of what is mandatory upon every person. And as Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, لا يبيع في سوقنا إلا من تفقه في الدين. No one is to buy and sell in our market unless he has the knowledge of the deen. Can you imagine that you get a license to open a store or to be in the market? At the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, your license is that you know the rulings of the halal and the haram, so that you don't do haram when you're buying and selling. So it becomes a mandatory thing. If you have business, you have to know what's haram and halal, or you have to ask the people of knowledge in every matter that you're doing. Otherwise, when the norm is the haram, how can you save yourself and protect yourself from the haram? So this to respect the matters of ilm when it comes to these types of things. One last thing before we finish, inshallah ta'ala. Abdullah ibn Mubarak radiallahu anhu, rahimahullah, and radiya anhu, he was asked, ما الذي يجب على الناس من تعلم العلم? What is obligatory upon the people to learn when it comes to the ilm? He says, and this is a separate subject also, what is mandatory upon us, the aqeedah, the matters of ibadah, mandatory upon us to learn. But he says here, ألا يقدم الرجل على شيء ألا يقدم الرجل على شيء إلا بعلم. يسأل ويتعلم. That the man would not يقدم, he does not go forward in anything unless he has knowledge. He asks and he learns. If a person is seeking the path of learning, you don't learn by asking. You learn and then you ask, right? But if you're not interested in seeking the path of being a student of knowledge, right? That means also whenever any step you take, you need to ask. And that's where you ask the people of knowledge, right? So there's difference between the settings of, imagine we have a class, for example, we're going to learn the aqeedah. So the session starts after alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, questions. We didn't learn anything yet, right? So you have to learn and then you ask. But if you have something in your life, you want to get married, you want to come make salah, yes, you learn how to make salah and things like this, but you ask the people of knowledge before you do anything. Don't assume that everything will be fine without knowledge. So not to do anything unless a person would ask and learn. He says, فَهَذَا الَّذِي يَجِبُ عَلَى النَّاسِ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْعِلْمِ ثُمَّ فَسَّرَ. And this is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. So if you know, mashallah. If you don't know, then you ask the people of knowledge. And asking the people of knowledge is ibadah in itself. It's an act of worship. And any act of worship, there's etiquettes to it. And there's ways to it. Right? And you're seeking what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you to the best of your ability. That's why you have to trust the one that you ask, trust his knowledge and trust his ilm and his religion. And then the last thing that he said, he says, لو أن رجلا لم يكن له مال لم يكن عليه واجب أن يتعلم الزكاة. If a man doesn't have money, then it's not mandatory for him to learn the rulings of zakah. It's not mandatory. It's good to learn, but it's not mandatory upon him. فإذا كان له 100 درهم وجب عليه أن يتعلم كم يخرج ومتى يخرج وأين يضع وسائر الأشياء على هذا. If he has 200 of dirham, then which is the nisab, the minimum requirement for a person to have for the zakah, then he has to learn when, how much that he should give of zakah, and when and where does he put it, who deserves the zakah, and the rest of this. And this is just as an example. So what is mandatory upon you today, then you have to learn how to do it. Your aqeedah, which is a mandatory thing that for a person to learn, matters of belief, and the ibadat, salah, is mandatory upon everyone. We have to learn the rulings of the zakah and before the salah, for that the tahara, the wudu, and how to purify ourselves and so on. And also an obligatory knowledge the love of Allah, the fear of Allah, to exalt Allah, which is part of the aqidah, to learn what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His names and attributes. Then you have a business, you learn what is related to your business. You're married, you need to know what is the rights of your wife and your children, and what's more than just the rights. And the same thing for the wife, which is whatever makes her unique as a woman versus every position. You're a husband, there's things to be, for a person to learn. If you're a son, right, that means there's things for us to learn being a son, being a worker. You have a contract between people, all kinds of things. You're going for Hajj. You don't have to learn the rulings of it now, but before you go to Hajj, you have to learn the rulings of Hajj, and so on. So this is mandatory knowledge, and this is where he keeps on mentioning these statements of some of the ulama. They said, one last thing, I said this is the last thing, but one last thing since I said 7:30, 2 minutes inshallah. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah said, just to finish the subject, he was asked, ما يجب عليه من طلب العلم. What is mandatory for the person to seek knowledge? He said what we just mentioned. ما يقيم به الصلوات, what for him to establish the salah. وأمر دينه من الصوم والزكاة وذكر شرائع الإسلام, and the Sawm and the Zakah, and he mentioned the shara'i' of al-Islam. And he says he has to learn this and whatever to establish the deen. And you add more to this. If you are in an environment where it happened that you heard some things that is doubts or fitan, then you have to push that away from yourself with ilm. Maybe it's not mandatory for someone else living somewhere where he is not bombarded by these words of kufr and deviation. So that means there's an extra mandatory knowledge. A person in an environment where the Rafidah, those who curses the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, day and night he's hearing what they're saying, or people of kufr and so on. And these types of things, we should not even sit or hear these types of things. But if it happened, then a person has to push away that with ilm. So the ilm has the cure to these types of illnesses and diseases. So we'll stop here inshallah ta'ala because of the time. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us benefit from what we heard and to make us among those who learn the benefiting knowledge and to act upon it. Hopefully inshallah ta'ala we can continue after Salat al-Maghrib. Inshallah, if Allah will. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala Muhammad wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.